So that took me almost 20 minutes, and there's a simple reason for that. Actually, there's two reasons. One reason is it's really fun to play the Polara. All the sounds are musical, they're dynamic, they're lively, they're interesting, and yet they're capable of tremendous subtlety, which for me is super important in a reverb pedal. The second reason is that I wanted to put this pedal through its paces in very much the same way I would if I were choosing an all-around reverb pedal, or really any reverb pedal, because I like to have a small board, I like to use the same board live and in the studio, and I like to play a lot of different types of music. So it's pretty important to me that a reverb pedal is able to do all the things I want it to do and do them well. And this particular reverb pedal fulfills that criteria, those criteria with flying colors. And in fact, this reverb pedal is conceived of not as an evolution of the supernatural and the very cool, yes, they are, don't say anything, the very cool space person psychedelic graphics might lead you in the direction of thinking that this is primarily an over-the-top reverb pedal. Far from it. It's capable of some huge sounds, but it's really conceived of, like the RV7, as a real workhorse and one that can do the job across a range of reverb sounds and do them all without any compromises. And the evolution of this pedal from the RV7 includes a lot of really nice and important things. A smaller form factor, switchable tails, which is to say you can switch between hardwired true bypass and no tails, or tails with a completely neutral buffer that works great and saves you space on your board if you have all true bypass pedals and you need a buffer there. As well as a different, slightly different ranges on the controls and control layout and all of that stuff. And things were just chosen right. This is a very well-designed pedal. I really, really like it. Okay, it's stereo, of course, and we are hearing it in stereo all along. And I tried to give you a sense of the fact that this pedal has great sounds. It's near impossible to dial in anything that sounds cheesy, even at the extreme settings. And it handles distortion, fuzz brilliantly, and it does all the cool stuff, but in a way that, man, I know that if I can adjust a pedal blind, can't see the front of it, somebody like me who tends to forget everything, then clearly this thing was designed for an idiot like me. And if it's designed for an idiot, that means it's going to work even better for you because you're a friggin' genius. So let's go through the sounds and just kind of revisit the various algorithms, all of which are really, really cool. What's our first algorithm? I got to look it up. I told you I forget everything. Room. Now, room sounds, man, I am not a big fan of some reverb pedals' room sounds because they can very quickly sound excessively sort of like you're in a bathroom that doesn't have good acoustics. Not this one. Very realistic. And as with all the algorithms, you have the liveliness knob, which controls really how bright the reverberation is. And at minimum, we can get real subtlety and change the characteristics of the room to one that is less reflective. And you really notice the utility of this control if you dial up the decay to maximum. That is a totally different room than this room. And yet the difference is natural across the full range. To me, anyway, it sounds really natural. It is extremely usable, and I hope you heard that with all the percussive stuff I was doing and all of that. So let's go to the next out. I'm trying not to look. I don't want to look. I can almost feel where the little marker is. Next one, plate. Perhaps my favorite choice if I had to choose one reverb algorithm for a pedal, and thankfully I don't, but if I did, it would probably be plate because it has enough character, more character than a typical modern hall sound, and a little bit more of a smoky characteristic to the decay, and yet it's neutral enough that I can use it for anything. And it sounds good at long and short decay time. And I love to darken up the plate with this. This knob is really, to me, it's the secret weapon of this pedal is the liveliness knob. It's the subtlety knob because it means that I can go with these long times and not have the reverberations swallow what I'm playing. So I get the perception of big, or my audience or listeners do, and yet I can still hear what I'm doing and not disappear. I don't want to disappear. Where are we at? There we are. Next, what do we got? Reverse. This is an interesting one. It is a beautiful sound. I should mention that this pedal is not capable of full wet, except on reverse, where it is more or less by definition. And it falls somewhere between like a reverse delay sound and a kind of auto volume swell or slow gear type sound, which I really like. And you can kind of control how long that swell happens with the decay time. It's just cool. And it's the one effect on here that is just really unique. I mean, all the sounds are really great, but I don't know how to say this really. It's kind of cool. It's like a nice surprise. It's like, oh man, that's like a whole other category of stuff that I can do with this pedal. And now, what do we got? Modulated. Oh, yes. Now, modulated reverbs can sound great or can sound cheesy. This one sounds great because the modulation is the right depth and the right character. And again, if I want something a little bit less obvious and a little bit more obtrusive, I'm going to dial back my liveliness. And we have just a deeper, sort of chewier sweep that's not up in the high end, not that more sort of obvious phasey stuff. It's a little bit more almost like a pitch shifting, but I don't know what I'm talking about. It just sounds cool. What else do you need to know? Halo. Man, I have never been a big Halo fan of cascading, in this case, cascading octaves on the reverberation. The Supernatural kind of won me over for some applications, and I was using it, but I was always using it where the effect was sort of the point. Never really was using it in a context where I was just trying to add a little bit more dimension to the reverb, but where I would use a standard reverb. And this one, again, they just kind of hit it right in the sweet spot where we have enough of an effect that it's really playing a role, and a dynamic one at that, but sounds just great. It works very well with different types of sounds, including distortion. I hope you heard that, and not all Halos do. Notice I'm hitting my low strings hard a lot of the time because we're perhaps all familiar with the weird artifacts that can happen when we hit the high strings hard, and not present here. But sometimes we kind of don't notice at first the low string artifacts that a really sharp transient on one of the lower strings will cause weird kind of boomy qualities. Not here. Happy about that. Where are we at here? Am I vertical? Hall. Oh, I gotta crank the hall for you all the way up on the decay, and I think I'm gonna go mid, a little bit low on the, or a little bit less than medium on the liveliness, because I want you to hear this is one of the more beautiful hall sounds I've heard. And again, dial back liveliness for slightly more subtle, but still very long decay. Nothing boomy, and realize that I have my level set pretty high. And again, it's really the interaction of the decay and the liveliness knob that make this pedal so easy and musical to use. And it's almost a little bit, to me, analogous of like a 3-knob, Fender reverb tank, or reverb plugin in a DAW that's really great, or one of the classic studio lexicon units, in the sense of you have this like interactiveness between the control that in a very simple way opens up a huge range of sounds and the ability to sit. This is like a great reverb if you're doing a lot of studio work. It just does everything well, and it's really easy to make it work in a mix. I've been using it. I've been tracking with reverb, which I tend to do anyway because I like to get my sounds up front, but it can be a little tricky, particularly if you're stacking different reverbs and stuff. This has been a particularly easy one to use on recordings. Where are we at? Spring. I saved this for last because spring to me is the hardest sound to do. There are some pedals out there that do just spring or primarily spring and do it very well. It's harder to find pedals that are multi-reverb pedals that do spring well. Hopefully at the beginning you heard that this one does it brilliantly, that there is the splash and the sproing, but it is not a caricature and it doesn't have weird plinky artifacts. Has a little bit of flam. So that's your Fendery sound. But if we darken, we can get more into, I don't know, those 3 and 4 spring tanks that are a little more rich and dark and a little bit less surfy. Let's go really long with decay. And if you want to go super bright, you can. And again, it's not going to get unmusical. It's going to get musical and stay musical. Something like that. Throw distortion at it, fuzz at it. Then you got this cool little thing that locks your controls in your favorite setting so that when you take your board to the gig, everything's where you left it. I like that kind of thing. Comes with a little Velcro that's sized to fit perfectly on the back. Also has the rubber thing. All that good stuff. Oh, also about the quietest soft touch switch I've ever heard. Feels really high quality. And it just, that kind of matters. I'm not one of these people who obsesses about such things, but I do play a fair number of solo gigs or gigs where I'm accompanying a singer, just me and the singer, or accompanying a poet or something like that, and in a small space, unmiked, and that click is a little distracting. Really nice that they thought of doing it that way. I don't know what else to tell you. That's one of the best spring sounds, best plate sounds, nicest tall sounds, best... What are they? Oh, shimmery. They're calling it halo. I think I just use halo and shimmer interchangeably. But best octavey reverb sound. Really, just every sound, no compromise. Super easy to dial in. Super simple to use. Thought of everything. I think they must have been listening to the players. Either that or just, somebody over there knows what needs to happen. And I think I know who that someone is. This will do the job. It will. Whatever you need it to do. And that's why mine's got Velcro on the back. Should tell you something. Till next time.